What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 451. My name is Steve, one of the co-hosts of the show, and as always, I'm joined by
Ron.
How come every word you use is either cocksucker, shitballs, or fuck?
Good question. I've wondered the same. I don't know if you're talking to me or Ronald, but
Or if you want a more poignant alternate, if I may. Dad, you need to be nicer to me.
Yeah.
That's true.
Anyway,
That's true.
And by me, I mean John. Quiz kid John Walker.
So what's going on? What's the plan for this episode? We got a required viewing pick, John.
Yes,
You
we're
chose,
watching, or we watched. We're not
watched,
going to
that's
watch.
right.
It would take a long time if we were going to suddenly watch it. But we watched Magnolia, the Paul Thomas Anderson film from 1999. Kind of as a through line to the Tom Cruisiness of our discussion last week about the latest Mission Impossible movie.
Cool.
And then Ronald and I saw the new Tim Robinson comedy. It's not he didn't write or direct it, but it's kind of built around his comic persona, and it's
Right.
also kind of a toxic bromance or whatever you might want to call it with Paul Rudd, who's just doing that easy charm he has in a way that's maybe a little different than what we've seen before.
Right.
And I don't know if I said the name of the film, Friendship. That's brand new or just came out last week. Ronald and I both saw that. And then Steve and I have both finished watching the first season of The Studio on Apple TV+. I don't know. That kind of sounds like a show. Maybe we'll talk
Sounds like a
about a couple
show.
of other things we've watched.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about Magnolia, but yeah, I mean, after that, we'll get into. Yeah, there's a couple of things I caught up on finally. Some that I haven't seen still, but I did want to mention one that I texted you guys about last week just to kind of close the loop on one of them. It was like, one of those moments where, well, something didn't work out for me to see, which, full disclosure, I didn't get to see Mission Impossible still.
Yeah.
But there was a silver lining and I saw something else, but we'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah.
Let's go into Magnolia, John. You want to, I guess, remind us, obviously the Tom Cruise through line you mentioned already from last week's conversation, but why was Magnolia the one Tom Cruise through line you chose to go with?
I don't remember when it was that I kind of pegged this as one of my movies that I would like to watch again. And now when I think about that, I think about doing it on this show. So sometimes I'll be like, I gotta wait several weeks to watch that movie I want to watch because I want to watch it in time with Ronald and Steve. But I don't know. It was relatively recently that it seemed like, oh yeah, that's one that like I love, but that I've forgotten a lot about, and I saw it. It came out the year I first moved to Baltimore. So I remember very vividly the sort of, the emotions of the movie and kind of syncing up with it. And I was hugely into Amy Mann's music at the time. And there had been a lot of talk about how her third album had been rejected by the studio. I mean, not the studio, but the label, after being hyped or being like a date was set. I just remember there was a long time where she was kind of in limbo. And so there was this announcement that Paul Thomas Anderson had heard the demos for her new album and was writing characters based on her songs, and that it was going to be the soundtrack to the movie. And, around this time I worked at a cool record store and we got like an advance, promo that had a few songs on it. It was just an exciting time for me as a big fan of her music and as someone who had really enjoyed Boogie Nights. But I think it was really this that was my jam as far as really cementing my love of Paul Thomas Anderson at the time. And I also think there's something about I look at it now, and I think the movie's something I definitely wanted to get into with you guys in a minute, is just how prescient this movie seems about certain things, or at least the things in this movie that made it seem so overwrought and kind of emo at the time. Now I feel like people talk about depression and trauma, and a lot of this stuff is much more on the surface. And so it almost seems like he was kind of seeing it a little bit in advance, the way that, whatever the inverse of hurt people is, the sort of damaged people can help each other sort of sense that. I mean, I guess this movie shows you both things. It shows you the cycle of people hurting each other, but it also shows you how people can break that. And it's so much about like dissatisfaction and questioning yourself and blaming yourself and forgiving yourself, that I think that those are things that maybe I didn't catch on to at the time. And also now it's interesting that Paul Thomas Anderson was a much younger man when he made this movie than I am now, and I still see wisdom in it, but I also see a kind of movie that I don't think he makes anymore. I think he's matured so much. He doesn't go for the jugular and entertain with quite the vigor that he did in maybe Boogie Nights in this. And, right. I would say even Punch Drunk Love has shades of that. And Artie, by There Will Be Blood, he's making almost a different kind of movie that's a meditative assault, on you sometimes. So I don't know. There's a lot to say about his work, and I just said a lot about just why I picked this movie. But yeah, it was a movie that I remembered very fondly, and also kind of wondered how it would hold up. And then, yeah, definitely had, and I said this last time too, had thought, okay, the Tom Cruise character, who at the time was this sort of super caricature-ish seeming men's rights activist. I don't even think that term existed then. And now there's a bunch of influencers just like TJ Mackey.
Oh yeah, dude.
And he almost seems tame. I think he still has it still packs a wallop to see Tom Cruise at his. If you are a Tom Cruise fan, and I happened to work with a woman when this movie came out, who was in love with Tom Cruise, and I think this was, in her opinion, when he was at his most beautiful, like this just phase of him. Beautiful. And so I think this movie really weaponized. We talk about that a lot when an actor weaponizes what is charming about them, right? In a role that's, I mean, it's courageous or whatever. I'm not saying that, but I think it seemed very smart of Tom Cruise to realize that this was a good part for him and not to be afraid of it. He was apparently a little worried about it, but I think he just saw the opportunity. And I think it opens your mind a little bit about what Tom Cruise is willing to do, because TJ Mackey is a disgusting character, but he also kind of develops into somebody that you can understand why he is the way he is, and he's kind of pitiable in the end. He's never like someone you admire, but you do sort of almost find him pathetic in a way that makes him more relatable than the earlier part of the movie. Anyway, I've said a lot. Ronald, I think you said you didn't know if you had seen Magnolia before. What did you think? And was it in fact a movie you had not seen in its entirety?
Yeah, I definitely hadn't seen it before.
Oh wow.
It's Donnie Darko came out in 2001. This came out in 99. It would have been in the same vein as some of the stuff I liked, but this was a little more intersecting stories and a lot of movement. It was so much more movement than I was expecting. I got a little overwhelmed with it. I was like, everybody's walking around and talking, and I was a little overwhelmed by that.
It's dizzying was the word that came to me. Like even the way the music and the montages of the people work,
Jesus
it really
Christ.
is. Like it never lets you rest, really.
Well, I think when you have like 9 characters, essentially that you're really kind of following around or tracking, I guess that contributes to the runtime. But to your point, I definitely agree with that observation on your first watch for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was dizzying, but once it calmed down and you can see the intersecting stories, and some stuff was from the past, right? Some stuff was from the past.
Once it's in the main movie, everything's in the same timeline.
Okay, right, gotcha. But I really did enjoy the type of storytelling it was. It did feel a little heavy-handed in terms of the emotions of it. But honestly, when you're in a state of despair the way that some of these characters are, I don't see why this wouldn't have come across like that if a person were at the end of their rope, or have a person dying in their lives, or have
I think you're kind of referring to
it.
Julianne Moore's character obliquely there, right? I mean, that's who you're thinking of when you think of who's the most live wire. Like all the characters that are emotional in the extreme, she's the one who maybe has a character I understand a lot more now than I did when I first saw the movie. But I think that had more to do with my age than it being my first time watching the movie. I think now I truly see the torment of what she must be going through and the guilt she's feeling, and that whole idea of being judged by the pharmacist. I think when I first saw this film, I don't know if I understood why that would bother you so much, or what, you know what I mean? I think I was just kind of like, wow, she's intense, but I mean, I think when you say kind of overwrought emotions, I remember that being one of the characters who, like, if you're kind of missing the vibe of this movie, you can be like, why did that lady flip out on that pharmacist? But if you really are in the mind of these damaged people who are trying to keep their head above water, you can see why that condescension would be the very thing that would set you off,
Yeah, for sure.
And it's always the wrong person, right? That when that kind of meltdown happens, you never are directing it at the person that you're actually mad at.
Never. You clobbering the person that's just like within proximity, which fucking sucks. And you know, it was kind of interesting to see this like ripple effect of how, you know, it's like bad people don't just exist, they're kind of created, you know? It's a weird way of thinking about it in a way, but I don't think anybody wakes up and says like, I hate women. You know, it's like you have this series of things that you personalize in a very specific way that you probably shouldn't, but you know, you metabolize it in a very specific way. You think this is the way it should be, and then you think, man, you know, this Andrew Tate thing. You know, I watched a lot of like Maury and shit like that. So those dudes always existed, and you know, it's just with media, the way that podcasting works and the way that we consume media now, I guess that stuff has definitely come to the forefront. But I always remember every couple months seeing somebody on like Maury Povich kind of spitting this like, women they need to listen and shut up and let me talk, and that's the problem. They need to shut that. I'm like, man, it's wild, but you're right that there's just like this. I mean, it's Andrew Tate. You know, it's like the Andrew Tates of the world, the people that are just kind of anti everything.
Well, they're also kind of grifters. They figured out the kind of insecure man who needs to, because I think it was another way the movie was prescient, is if you didn't get a huge look at the audience, but whenever you did see them, they all kind of look like dweebs.
Yeah.
And I think that's something Paul Thomas Anderson understood, was that the guys who are attracted to this kind of guy aren't even necessarily guys who are like this guy. They're guys who in their dreams want to be like this guy. But then we see like the way he comes in, the way TJ Mackey comes into the interview, like, and strips to his underwear and does a little flip and all this stuff. It's like he's trying so hard to alpha dog every situation that he's in. And like, you believe it. That's totally extreme. What's funny to me is it's like, this is not too many degrees off of Tom Cruise jumping on the couch on Oprah, like just a couple of years after this movie was made, you know? So this is like something Tom Cruise, you know, this is maybe even a little bit of knowing self-parody that he's thrown in there. But like, I do think the idea that he's this outsized specimen, you know, and the guys who are following him are just nobodies, you know, you don't even really get a good look at them.
That's rough, man. Yeah, and it's super similar to Andrew Tate, because Andrew Tate not only is that person, but there's a physical aspect to Andrew Tate. Like, he's like, not only am I this person, I beat people up for a living, I've knocked bigger men out than me, I'm pretty good at what I do, I'll knock 100 men out like he just did the other day. It's just like this wild image that you put out into the world that is only matched by the bigger assholes that kind of believe you. It's just kind of sad to watch. Honestly.
Well, another thing that's sad to see is Philip Seymour Hoffman in this film. This is like, to me, the most like heartfelt role of his. Like, this is the sweetest maybe character that he ever plays. And I did see where Paul Thomas Anderson said he wanted to give him an uncomplicated, kind character to play, you know, which again is sort of against type. And similar to William H. Macy, he gave him a really emotional character because he thought that William H. Macy shied away from characters who were really emotive. Like, so I think he was working with actors that he knew. Even John C. Reilly had said he'd always played these kind of idiot man children, and that he had, you know, the idea that he could grow a mustache and kind of play a romantic lead, even if it's a goofy romantic lead, but the kind of guy that someone could fall for, you know. So Paul Thomas Anderson had his little actors he liked working with, and he was doing stuff for them and writing stuff for them. And supposedly the final image of Melora Walters smiling was kind of the first thing that Paul Thomas Anderson came up with. And he also, you know, he knew that he could make whatever movie he wanted. New Line basically said after Boogie Nights, like, okay, just make whatever you want. And he was going to maybe do something more intimate after that. But because the studio said make whatever you want, he said he kept realizing that opportunity might not happen again. And so he made this sprawling, and this is truly, people say sprawling about a lot of movies. This really is a sprawling movie. Like but you get, what you said, Ronald, is very true. It's similar, Punch Drunk Love has a lot of like montage and like weird like transitions in it. And this movie kind of does that too, with the sort of the dizzying aspect of the camera's moving this way and that, and the music is kind of fading in and out, and the music is sort of in the background and sort of scoring the scene, but then it becomes louder when it really matches the action. I just think there's a lot of cool things going on with how this movie was put together, that I think do make it kind of kaleidoscopic, I don't know, like it itself is a big collage. Anyway, did you have any favorite storylines, Ronald, or any that particularly surprised you? I guess there's one big thing I want to say. Did you know about the frogs?
No.
So how did the frogs hit you? I mean, if I knew about the frogs somehow in advance, I'd gotten clues and the frogs were on the poster, but like I still, when it happens, it surprises me every time. It's so loud and so sudden. It actually made me jump.
I didn't really know how to process it, to be honest with you, man. Like I don't. What was the is that? Yeah, it was wild, man. Raining frogs, like I don't know, man. I wish what does it mean? What does it mean?
I don't know. I guess I kind of think I have an idea. Steve, what do you think of the frogs? If you think of them as having a meaning, or what's their place in the movie, or however you would define that?
Yeah, well, first off, I mean, John C. Reilly's character gives it the explanation in the monologue he has, but I think it's, I guess my take on it. I mean, it's about, I think I remember reading this when I saw it initially, like doing a deep dive on it, but that there is a reference to Exodus.
Mm-hmm.
I think on one of the billboards or something, there's multiple shots in the movie where there's like a reference to that, a passage about letting go, unless you want to be played by frogs. Like literally, I think that's the reference.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a biblical image
where characters are at by the time the story wraps up. That the idea of letting go and this overall sense of loneliness, but that's always the biblical reference was my take or my response to for seeing it the first time, and even seeing it again, I paid more attention after reading that. I've watched this in the years since '99 a couple times, but even on this rewatch, like noticing those billboards, which were pointed out to me years ago, it seems that part of the movie is definitely a part that you can't not mention.
Yeah.
And some people really have feelings about that scene, and it's kind of whatever to me, but it's a bit too, I guess, like in terms of messaging for the movie, it's like, is that something that we should have gathered from the rest of the movie before that has to happen, or the monologue that I just referenced, the Jim's character gives, but I don't know, like it's always just been a biblical reference that I wasn't super familiar with myself, but is on display in the film in those billboards.
Yeah, I feel like that's sort of like a clue or a hint that might be coming, but I think that it has much more to do with the sort of nature of that opening like 12-minute thing that's narrated by Ricky Jay, that's all about coincidence and chance and things that seem like they couldn't possibly have been random, but must have been random, and how these things just happen. And even later, Stanley, the quiz kid, says this is a thing that happens. When he sees the frogs falling from the sky, like he knows from his reading, this is something that has happened, and that has happened. Like there have been rains of frogs and fish and stuff, and there's different theories as to how that happens. Something get a downspout or something sucks up into the clouds and it sucks up whatever's in the water. And even Patton Oswalt's diver character is sort of, he gets sucked up into the plane and then dropped down by the plane. So it's kind of like, that's a little bit of a hint about what will happen with the frogs. But yeah, it's kind of meant to be unexplained. Charles Fort, if you've ever read anything about Fortean thought or anything, he wrote a lot about unexplained happenings and the kind of the sort of understanding of the world that you might have through unexplained happenings. And he wrote a lot of stuff in, I think, the early 1900s or early first half of the century. So anyway, like I think Paul Thomas Anderson was into that at the time too. So he knew this was kind of an unexplained phenomena that was like, or this is one of many unexplained phenomena that involved, weird things falling out of the sky or storms of weird things. So I think that was a thing too. But I think in terms of the movie, it is meant to be like, oh, this is like a biblical plague, but it's also something that ties everybody together. It's like in that moment, all these storylines that have kind of been intersecting and kind of flirting with each other and everything, they suddenly have like, it's like the disaster that kind of puts things into perspective. Everybody kind of hits a weird pause button or reset button or something happens during that storm, and it becomes much more about survival. And, like for instance, Claudia's mother running to her in that context, I feel like they find each other much more quickly than they would if she just went to knock on the door on an average day at Claudia's apartment. I think, and even Donnie Smith, quiz kid Donnie Smith, with the way that Officer Jim helps him and everything that happens because of the storm. I don't know. There's just little moments that are in that moment, the tying together. I also think you can see that what's his name's about to shoot himself, and the frog falling knocks the gun away, and he doesn't shoot himself. So in a way, he's been spared, but also been punished to live with his horrific acts. So I think there's a lot of reasons why it is like a biblical plague that represents a wrath, but of the wrath of God almost. But it's also meant to be like an unexplained thing that is a total coincidence. And if you ever heard the explanation for it, it wouldn't really still explain why this had happened this way.
Right.
But I love it because it's so weird and gory, and so like it feels so big budget. Like the way even now it looks pretty good. Like you can see a little bit of the sort of the edges of the CG that they were using to create some of that. But I don't know. I still think it's surprising and interesting. And like when that bloody ambulance slides on its side, and all over all the dead frogs and stuff. Like to me, that's like this could be happening in a horror film about a plague of frogs. Like it to me is such a cool, crazy thing to throw into this movie. And when you hear Paul Thomas Anderson say, "This might be the last time I get told by a studio you can do whatever you want," I kind of feel like that kind of big gesture is there. What is interesting though is that he hasn't made another movie that is this like operatically entertaining since then. It's interesting to me that I wonder, like I think that his latest, what's it called, One Battle After Another, that one looks like it has a lot going on and it might be kind of exciting. So I don't know, but I did ask you, Ronald, did you have a sort of favorite storyline or a favorite pair of characters or anything that happened? Monologue? Who was your favorite crying white person?
I think the Tom Cruise, the interview was just tense, man. And when she kind of, he's like, you have a fucking question. And she's just like, why did you lie? Something about that, man. And
it was talking about his mom being alive.
Yeah.
But it's like you could tell that she went from kind of playing along to going like, okay, if you're going to treat me like this. I thought that was a really interesting scene, the kind of balance of power. I would have almost liked to seen her get a little bit more later in the movie to see how she was reacting to him. But I guess you could have seen the reporter following him or going with him to his father's house or something crazy. But I guess that would have been too silly.
Yeah.
But I would have liked to have seen that character stick around because I liked the way they kind of had a back and forth and the way he almost acted like a child when she kind of crossed the line with him. He was like pouting and just looking at her like when someone's looking at you all mean and you want to be like, what are you doing?
And just stop talking. He just stopped talking till the time was over, which is fucking crazy. It's a crazy thing to do. Mm-hmm. Very childlike. Yes. Was not expecting that at all.
What about you,
I feel like
favorite moments or
the Tom Cruise, his dad dying is really, and honestly, even for the Philip Seymour Hoffman reaction to it is like so empathetic and so emotional. But like that moment, it's going for it. But you just for all the hate, like in the first moments you see of his character, or there's no reason to like his character, for the most part of what you spend time um with him. You just he's kind of disgusting, really. It maybe chips away throughout the film and the scenes, but I feel like that scene especially, when he kind of breaks down, it's you learn more about his life, I guess, throughout the movie, and you kind of understand him more as a person. It's not right still, but it's it just in that moment, at the bedside, it's just like everything is processed.
Yeah, he goes through this whole relationship with this man.
It's literally beginning to end and you have Philip Seymour Hoffman watching it happen. And it's just, that's just an incredible scene. I just like, I was in it, and in the past, and even on the rewatch, it's just an incredibly electric scene. I think, all the things that are going around it, it's just like, he's incredible in the movie, I think. So he's the standout for me.
No, I like that. I mean, you can see there the image that I chose.
Yeah.
I like that stuff. I like the way that story weaves through the whole movie, because you've got Julianne Moore off on her thing, and her story intersects with the little kid, and then you've got the TJ Mackey storyline, which is its own thing before he intersects with this,
right?
And then you've got the sort of comparison even between Jimmy Gator and Earl Partridge, the Jason Robards character, where Jimmy Gator is this guy who was a philanderer but also molested his daughter, and then over here Jason Robards was a philanderer but didn't. I mean, again, I'm not saying we're saying like he's a great guy. I'm just saying there is this, you start to see like, oh, there's darkness, and then there's genuine human darkness. And that scene with his wife where she like basically says, why doesn't Claudia talk to you? Through all this, why wouldn't our daughter talk to you? I will say this. I don't know that in any of my previous viewings of the movie that I had just heard enough stories from people, some voices that I hadn't heard before about, what molestation means and what sexual abuse means and like how it affects people. I just think this time I felt very informed about how Claudia's character is so sad from the first scene when you know why she's acting this way. I don't know that when I was younger, if I was quite getting why she was such a raw person, but like the idea that her dad comes in to tell her that he's dying and she has this reaction to him, it's an uncomfortable scene to watch, but I totally get her reaction to her circumstance. And so to me, something that really hit me hard this time was the scene and this time I put full on subtitles. So I think I caught a lot of dialogue that's buried in that mix, Ronald, the crazy sound mix. But like, I really appreciated the stuff that Jim says to Claudia at the end of the movie this time. Like, it really hit me when he says, "You're a good person," which is like, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe how much she needs to hear that. And it made me so sad that she needs to hear that. So that someone who's been through what she's been through and maybe has coped the way she's tried to cope might need someone that she believes is a good person to say, "You're a good person," and like, not the way people blame themselves for things that were done to them. I think that really got me. And another scene that just always has gotten me and never fails, Philip Seymour Hoffman on the phone telling the guy, "This is the scene in the movie where you help me." That is fucking gold to me. I just love that moment. That's Philip Seymour Hoffman doing his thing, but doing it in the nice way. But he's doing that thing he can do where he's like, "Guy, I kind of need you to listen to me here." And I love how much we see, if you think about his roles where he's playing a much more intense or intimidating or sour person. I think this character really does exist as a kind of an angel in the movie almost. Even the scene where you wonder, like, is he ordering porn to please himself? He's really doing it just to look for ads in the back of it, to look for Frank. But I love on the phone when he's saying, "And Penthouse and a Hustler." And then he pretty much tries to cancel the rest of the order. I don't know. I just love all that stuff. I do think this movie spreads out, and it does kind of take its time, but I think that's part of the magic of it, is that, and I kept thinking in my mind, could this have been like 6 30-minute episodes of a show or 4 45-minute episodes of a show? Not that it needs to be broken down that way, but I'm just saying I love the way the stories are woven together to the extent that it did make me think, oh, where's the stop? Where would be a point where you would go to credits and think that was a great episode of this saga?
Yeah.
But I do think it's interesting to do an epic, and the thing that makes it epic is the place. Like they wanted to really do something set in the San Bernardino Valley that captured the place, and also I think the feel of all the characters being united, being the thing that makes it epic, and the ideas behind it, more so than like, crazy things happening. But you do get a plague of frogs, so that's pretty crazy.
No, this is always kind of stood out to me among his films too. Is like not that emotional is the right word, but just like it's so, and maybe it's a criticism in some ways. Like again, like I know I've read reviews like where they kind of break down the monologue and like even how heavy-handed some of this messaging might be. But it's just like kind of wears its heart on its sleeve, like the whole movie. And I don't know, I guess some of his films do that. I mean, quite a bit, but I don't know. For some reason, this one definitely stands out.
This is the most on the nose in that sense.
Sure, I think that's what I'm trying to get at. Yeah, like it just feels so, just so clearly, just such an emotional movie. But yeah, I know. I mean, this has always been again, this is a case you make for 1999 being one of the best years for film ever.
Mm-hmm.
Just add that to the bucket because this is a great movie in my opinion.
I guess the one other thing I would ask then would be for Ronald, especially since this was your first viewing. What did you think of the sing along moment?
It didn't take away from it as much as I thought it would. I thought that I thought that I'd watch it and be like, what the hell is this? But I liked it. I liked it a lot. I thought it was really cool. I thought it was sweet in a way. It's like
you know what it made me think of, like when I was just thinking about talking about it in this context, was it's not the same thing at all, but it's a similar idea to the scene in the middle of Sinners.
Yeah,
where it's like the movie steps outside of literal reality, and that can work for you or not. And I think so for some people, this scene was like, oh boy, super eye rolling. But I feel like, and I'm not saying you were saying this, Steve, but I'm saying I wouldn't ding a movie that is so clearly going for that on hard on sleeve. Like this is all about that intensity of emotion, this whole movie. So when something's diving into that, I kind of applaud it for sticking to that ethos more than I would say like, oh, this one goes a little too far, this is a little too obvious. But I do think that like it is like heavy-handed, like some of those, like the things that are said in the monologues, I think they're impeccably acted. Like Jason Robards has some moments that are just incredibly like he tapped into something about a dying person's like breathing and the way they're in and out of awareness that was really interesting, so much so that when he starts humming along with the song in that sequence, it has like a real, I don't know, there's something really cool about the way the song is used to highlight the emotional state of the characters. And I like that kind of moment where it's like, this is a thematic moment that you're witnessing here, this is not a literal moment, but it is in some ways literal because all the characters are feeling this same way. And honestly, I think a lot of television shows since then have done the sort of montage of everybody feeling the same way, even if they're not singing along to the song. There's still like, think of how many television shows have ended a season or just a big episode with a montage of how everybody's doing. So I love that. I mean, I always call that like the tapestry of humanity montage. And it's one of the things that almost always gets me. Lost used to do it all the time. Like, just cut to everybody and show how everybody's kind of bummed
where they're at, and
you really know why. And that's the other thing I would say is I at least think that the melodramatic feelings in this movie are earned by most everybody's circumstances. You know what I mean? It's not like you wonder why these people are upset once you find out a little more about them.
Cool.
All right, so that's Magnolia.
Cool.
Ronald, what is your pick?
There's another flower that I like to use in this movie context. So in August, there will be a second adaptation of this movie called The Roses, starring Benedict Cumberbatch and Olivia Colman. But I want to go way back to 1989, where Danny DeVito adapted this novel, War of the Roses. I like Danny DeVito. The subject matter is just timely because relationships are relationships are relationships. But then there's the new one that's coming out this year. And
Sure.
I don't think I've seen War of the Roses in a really long time. I remember seeing bits and pieces of it. The thing is, like when I saw stuff as a kid, you don't have any context for any of that stuff. You know what I mean? It's all like, oh,
Right.
it's funny. These people hate each other. It's like, so, and I want to watch it now as an adult. So War of the Roses, and this also gets us fresh for the new one that's coming out in August with Benedict Cumberbatch.
This is like the definition of a black comedy, right? Or you know what I mean, or dark comedy. Like this is the
For sure.
definition of that. It's very, very, very much like where like they go for the throat with the nastiness of these characters, and the movie doesn't. The aesthetic of the movie isn't to shy away from that and be nicey nice. So yeah, this is a really great one. And I will say this, Ronald. I don't know. There should be a bell or something that goes off. Was on my list. So you just helped me. You helped me with my bottleneck of required viewing picks. I was going to make you guys. I just think this is one of those interesting movies, and the cast. It's such a terrific cast, and again, it's just really fun to see a movie that's never going to let up on the nastiness. It's not going to say, "Oh, in the end, you're supposed to want them to be together," or "Oh, in the end, you're going to really like this one and think the other one is the jerk." It's really like, no, this is two bad people who just keep finding a new bottom.
It's funny, man. Between this and Death to Smoochie, there had to have been a decision when the guys from It's Always Sunny picked Danny DeVito because he's such a unrelenting black dark humor.
He's so
sort of
good at
guy.
going dark without losing a kind of likability. You know what I mean? Or humanity or something.
Yeah, for sure. It doesn't look like it's available on anything for free, unfortunately. But it's really cheap to rent. It's looking as low as $3.79 on Amazon. So yeah, this is a nice and cheap rental. War of the Roses. Danny DeVito's. Is this his first one? First one he directed?
Did he not direct Throw Mama from the Train?
I thought that was
this?
later, right?
Oh, maybe it is. Maybe it is. I don't know. I know that he kind of had that,
Oh no, you're right. Throw Mama's 40 years before. For some reason, I thought that Throw Mama from a Train was like a 92 movie, 93. You're right.
It's
You're right,
another
it was-
potential required viewing. It's a fun movie that I haven't watched in a long time. Did you watch that one? Have you seen it?
Yes, man.
Okay.
Anne Ramsey, the scariest lady
Anne Ramsey.
ever.
You know who else is good in that? I think Bruno Kirby is in that. Isn't he I think he plays like a cop that comes over that they have to deceive.
Bruce Kirby.
Bruno Kirby is who I'm thinking of.
Okay.
But maybe Bruce Kirby is his like cool twin brother.
I'm just looking at the cast list, and there's a Bruce Kirby.
Oh,
who's
there is?
Detective Benedetto.
You know what? Let's look and see. Did he change his name at some point?
It's definitely not Bruno Kirby though.
It says is Bruno Kirby related to Bruce Kirby? Yes.
Yeah,
he's
so
the
Bruno
father
Kirby
of-
is the guy, and I thought Bruno Kirby was in.
Bruce is Bruno's dad.
I know, but I'm saying I thought I remembered Bruno Kirby's face in.
It's just that genetics you're thinking.
I guess it's just that dad has strong genes.
Dang, that's crazy.
Or maybe he's buried somewhere else in the cast list. I just saw Kirby and thought that was the one you're talking about.
That's wild, man.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let's do a whole dive into the Bernie or the Kirby acting dynasty. At any rate,
Cool.
there's Kirby representation. That's all we're talking about.
Oh,
You
yeah.
got to have that. So let's talk a little bit about another movie we've seen, Ronald.
Sure.
Why don't you kick off the film Friendship, starring Tim Robinson and Paul Rudd?
Yeah. It was directed by, is it Andrew DeYoung?
I think so.
Am I getting that name right? Friendship. I got that from Mortal Kombat. Um, and let me just make sure before I say. Oh yeah, I was right. Andrew DeYoung directed this one, and it is a cringy comedy about a friendship that comes out of just a lonely gentleman who is unliked by quite a few people who kind of he becomes friends with a very cool guy who does the weather, and they have a bond that lasts not too long.
Yeah, a couple days.
Before it spirals out of control. And it is some of these scenes are really hard to watch. Um what'd you think, John?
I was prepared for it to be even more extreme and
Yeah.
cringy, and like I was comforted by the fact that the movie didn't go as dark as I thought it might. You know, speaking
Okay.
of Where Are the Roses, which is a film that's a dark comedy, but really goes for it. I was kind of glad this didn't escalate to the sort of extremes we've seen this kind of film escalate to. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
that it stays relatively grounded. Again, grounded is not necessarily what you're looking for with a movie like this, but so I don't know. I actually quite enjoyed it. It was a fun movie to go see with Nikki and Henry. We don't often go see movies like kind of indie level movies like that for whatever reason. When we go to see a film as a family, often it's kind of a big movie, and so it was fun to see
Yeah.
a small movie that really. This reminded me of when I was really plugged into like festival films, and I was going to see a lot of indie films at the Charles Theater, and I still catch those movies, but I don't go see them as quickly as I can the way I used to. I just don't have the time. And so yeah, for me it was almost like a nostalgic blast in that sense. It reminded me of movies like Chuck and Buck, and I don't know, and any number of movies that are, like you said, Ronald, a little ratchet up that uncomfortableness or that level of cringe. But I still think that thematically it stayed kind of in the zone of an absurdist comedy. It fits the Tim Robinson persona that you might know from I Think You Should Leave or Detroiters, but it's not fully in that world. It's a little bit more grounded than that, but you can almost imagine a more mundane actor being very funny in this role, but in a different way. But Tim Robinson definitely brings that incredible awkwardness that he can nail. And I don't think the movie, I would say that it didn't really overstay, and no scene goes on too long. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't try to top itself too much. It's a little episodic maybe. I do think Paul Rudd's charm really does do a lot to make you instantly believe this guy's cool, and also to instantly see the sort of absurdity of this kind of like this sort of silly coolness, Ronald, that they're going for with him and his friends, like when they're singing a song to support each other, or just the way they like, they're such like bland, dull bros, you know, that like, and even duller bros that Tim Robinson works with, and he tries to create his little group at, you know, like these,
Yeah.
it really is a movie that's having fun, poking fun at the, you know, the whole male loneliness epidemic and the way that men try to make friends. And there's a little thematic thing going on there that actually has some meat on it. And in the end, I think it's just grounded enough that it's kind of sad. Like Tim Robinson's character, ultimately, who's funny and intimidating and weird and a little scary and over the top. In the end, he's kind of, you know, it reminds you of like, it's not like Taxi Driver necessarily, but it's more Taxi Driver than it is Cable Guy for me, in the way that I feel at the end is that this is like a real guy who's had a meltdown, and not like, oh, this is a comedy character. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
as silly
yeah.
as the movie is, but it's a pretty absurd comedy. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think maybe I thought it would be more like ha funny for me.
Yeah.
But once I realized it was more unsettling and less like one of his better sketches and more like just the mood of one of his characters stretched out over a movie, you know, I really appreciated it being what it is. And I think I could totally see him having a great career in movies. You know, the question of it, can he be at the center of a comedy? I was there with I don't know what your crowd was like, but I was there with quite a few people for the type of movie it is, and people were laughing. I mean, there was a lot of people that were getting the vibe, you know, of the movie. So
We were the only two people in the theater.
okay.
Yeah. So, man, it felt like Pierre, longtime listener. Thanks for listening always, and thanks for all the kind words you always say about us. He said something that I really agreed with. It feels like you're trying to turn the engine on and the key isn't and the engine isn't turning over. Like it feels like there's a momentum that's building that doesn't really feel like it pays off in the end. And I liked everybody, and I liked some of the cringe in it. It just I kept feeling like this shouldn't have been a movie that came out in the theaters. And Tim Robinson has made better things individually and sketches that feel a little more rewarding than this felt. So I was a little conflicted in the end. I was like, man, I love Paul Rudd's doing something incredible. Tim Robinson's doing something incredible. This should not be a fucking movie that I'm watching in front of me. It shouldn't. It shouldn't have been.
Yikes.
It shouldn't have been made. It shouldn't have been. No, that sounds fucking mean. It made me feel like I could have made a movie, and
Well, you could.
in a not a good way.
Oh, okay.
Like in a way, like I could do that. The way that assholes are like, I could play like LeBron, like that. Like I could play like that Tiger Woods, or I could play like, you know, I could throw like Tom Brady. I could be like him. And just something about it just didn't hit for me. And I think some of it was that the crowd wasn't there either. So it was just two people bouncing ideas off of each other through the movie, which didn't feel very fun. You know, I kind of wish that we
Yeah.
had a bigger crowd that could, like, I think about Tom Green, Freddie Got Fingered, which was unreal, absurd. And the first time I saw it, I walked out. Like, I just couldn't. Daddy, would you like some sausage? I was just like, I thought that's what I thought it was gonna be, and it wasn't. It's just way more absurd than that. And I watched it a second time, and I realized like sometimes it's just context that makes all of the difference in something being fun, you know. And the context that I maybe needed was a bigger crowd, that you know, some looser laughs, and it was just us reacting to things and the echo of our voices and the ha. You know, this thing Pierre does that didn't really, it was just us. And I feel like I needed a crowd. I really needed a crowd in this one.
Well, I mean, I think I was kind of hinting at what you said before, or I think I may have said it just in a different way, that like this is not the Tim Robinson movie. This is not written and directed by him. So it really is like somebody cast him in a movie and he brought his energy to it. So I do think that if he did create a movie from the ground up, it would probably be more of that haha funny that I was thinking I would get from this, because so many of the reviews are talking about just how hilarious it is, you know, and I was like, okay, it is funny, but it's more like you have to be really tuned to this weird frequency to find this movie hilarious, and that's cool, but I'm almost surprised that many critics are tuned to that frequency. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it's that the movie doesn't have that. I think it's just normally movies that are this, like you said, and what I called episodic, and what you called the engine not turning over. Like I'm being a little gentler on it, but even I think that like that sense of momentum and like irresistible comic energy that I was maybe thinking I would get from this is not the movie that it's trying to be.
The surprise laugh for me was Connor O'Malley, like just.
Oh, when he comes in and they have that weird scene. I liked him announcing something. I liked him announcing stuff to the party later. There were so many moments that are just ridiculous that almost felt like they didn't even write lines for that part. Do you know what I mean, Ronald? It was so low key, and in some ways I really appreciated that, and other parts I was almost like, this is kind of what you said. But see, I think I felt like I was viewing it as like this is a feature, and you were viewing it as a bug. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm watching a movie where this is happening, you know? And you were like, I can't believe this is a movie. So
I can't believe this is a movie.
But I was admiring the sort of, like, I enjoyed being in a theater. And like I said, it reminded me of festival movies or something. I was just like, I'm glad a movie this strange is being, is I mean, you know, it's the opposite of what you said. I'm glad this is at the White Marsh Theater. I'm glad this is at malls, you know? I think it's hilarious that someone might wander into this thinking it's going to be like, I Love You, Man, or whatever that movie was called.
We should not have pulled out of Afghanistan. I was like, what the God, what a funny line to put in the middle. And he just announced it in the middle of a party, Steve. Like, it's like Connor O'Malley is so fucking funny in this movie. He's only in it for 10 minutes.
It's not like he's giving a toast, but it's like he's declaring something to the crowd. And after he says what he's saying, before it cuts away, he just says, "And we should not have gotten out of Afghanistan."
Wow. That's amazing.
And there's also that running joke about when he's like, "We should watch the new Marvel. It's supposed to be sick."
Yeah.
And everything they say is like stuff that can't be like it. When Thanos drank the elixir and he was like, "Guys, I haven't seen he doesn't want him to spoil it for him, but everything they say is just like really bland and like really doesn't add up to any particular
and why
movie.
Are they saying the new Marvel?
The new Marvel. That's what's so great.
Everybody said it the whole movie. Like, yeah. Oh my God, I saw that new Marvel. It was incredible. It's like, new Marvel is crazy. Why are you saying it like that?
It's like, you're like the Incredible Hulk in that new Marvel. And he's like, no spoilers.
I haven't seen the new Marvel yet.
It's supposed to be sick.
That's such a male thing to say.
No, I know.
It
It's
is.
and it's the most bland. Well, that's what I mean
so
about
funny.
they're really poking fun at bland, like cheeseball
dudes.
suburban maleness, you know?
Yeah. See, man, you bring it. I was talking about that stuff really made me laugh. I really did enjoy those parts.
But that's the stuff that feels the most like Tim Robinson. His like you can see him having a sketch where he's saying, "I saw the new Marvel and it was very." You know, like,
God,
I also thought Kate Mara was pretty good. Like her
was
character
good,
was sillier and stranger than I thought. Like you expect her maybe to be the normal spouse, and instead she's this person who's got her own weird like storyline. And I love the suggestion that their son is not.
I hated that. The fucking.
I mean, I hated that, but I also thought it was funny because I like that actor, and they wait a long time to reveal that guy. And when you see him, you're like, "Oh yeah, the sons definitely look more like him."
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
And it's like him, even that opening scene in the group, what he says when they're like, she's talking about her depression or whatever. And then he's like, yeah, I don't want to spoil the scene. But no, yeah, I do think, as much as I enjoyed this movie, I think this is the kind of movie where maybe these critics saying it's hilarious, maybe there's a lot of that, you know, how sometimes people can be kind of performative laughing at like an indie comedy. I wonder if there's a little bit of that. Like I find Wes Anderson movies funny as hell, but I know that Wes Anderson movies are famous for having like crowds that go, you know, it's stuff that's like not funny. It's like chuckle funny, but people are acting like it's smart funny. I don't know. There's a, you know, we talked about fake deeping a couple of weeks back. There's a thing that's like performative laugh. There's got to be a catchy way to say performative laughing or like over laughing, or I don't know. As much as I love those movies, I do think sometimes people want to be heard as laughing. And I so much so that I feel embarrassed if I'm watching a movie that's kind of mildly funny and then I go, and I'm the only one who makes a noise. I'm like, I hope everybody knows that was a genuine laugh and not a performative laugh.
And not just a puh.
Yeah, not a puh. I hope everyone hears that I got that.
Yeah, and you just have like a monocle.
I do put on a monocle to laugh.
From time to time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like listening to you guys talk about it, for one, I'm absolutely very happy I did not take Aaron to see the movie.
Oh, yeah.
We were toying with the idea of going in to see this the other night when we had some plans canceled. We had like a date night type thing. And it was like, we can see this, or this. And it was like showing her the trailers for everything. And I was like, I just don't know if this is going to be your thing. Like, I don't really have a good read on like, I know who Tim, you know, she knows
I don't
who
see
Tim
Aaron.
Robinson
I don't
is.
see Aaron. I see you maybe thinking it's charming and fun, but I can't imagine that being a fun like date movie or whatever that would be. You know,
right. And that's kind of where, I was like kind of falling, and I was like, okay, hearing you guys speak about it,
we should give movies.
This is reassuring.
A Ritter rating, Ronald. If we see a movie that Steve doesn't, we should give him the Ritter rating. What we think Steve will think of the movie.
That's a great idea.
I think Steve will be like, I don't know, man.
No, I think I think he would give it a Suspiria remake, which was basically like.
Oh no!
I don't think I've ever seen like a possession, but I did see somebody trying to walk out of their own body while movies being shown. Just like
I think his attitude will be closer to when he's milder on a Wes Anderson movie or a Coen's or something like that. I think he'll be like, I don't know. I mean, you know, yeah.
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 It's a- eh.
So I think he'll be and you think he'll be
Fuck this movie. Yeah.
All right. So, but it didn't ruin your and Pierre's friendship.
No.
That's good.
Okay,
That's
good.
good.
No, we talked about it, and I was like, man, I want to make some more stuff after watching it. He's like, you should. You should make more stuff. So we shall see.
All right. So, Steve, like me, you finished watching the first season of The Studio on Apple TV Plus. We talked about the early
did.
episodes right when the show was coming out, but we haven't really come back to it. We could have done a few check-ins because we had the whole season in advance, but I kind of waited. I kind of doled them out, and I just recently finished the last 3. And I was really curious. I knew you had been watching it, Steve, so I was very curious what you thought of the season and how they wrap things up. And they've already announced a season 2. I kind of feel like this show is kind of quietly having a little moment. It's still sort of a secret. Anything that's on Apple TV Plus is like a secret. But I feel like this show is having a little bit of a moment. How did you feel about the way the season went?
I love the show, man. I love the season. I love the idea of what this show could be like in more seasons,
Mm-hmm.
I listened to a bunch of interviews that Seth and Evan were doing in the week lead up to the finale and even post. But I think Ronald said this like when you guys first started watching it, and I kind of was behind the ball on it. But like it's so the how inside baseball it is,
Yeah.
like how it's made kind of thing, plays so well to me, and obviously like our whole conversation that we have about anything relating to entertainment.
Yes.
But I just love I love the way that they use the characters, the cameos that they get, like the actors, actresses they get. Like it really does play to the story or the story of that episode at least, and in some cases to the episodes that follow. Like the episodes are so episodic and they kind of stand alone in a lot of ways, but there's enough of a through line with like the core characters at Continental Studios that it kind of carries from episode to episode.
Yeah.
So to kind of see some of those things tie up in the finale, like certain character motivations, like Catherine O'Hare's character, like when she finds, not to spoil anything, comes across Bryan Cranston's character, there's motivations that from the whole season. There's callbacks to, someone like Matt Bellany, the host of The Town, like he has like he's in the show, and there's callbacks to him. He pops up in later episodes. But yeah, I think the big thing for me is that like one, I've said it many times, I love Seth Rogen.
Yeah,
and I don't think there's many things that he's done that I don't at least really like, if not love. And especially when him and Evan are working together, I think it's just really something special. But yeah, I think for a show about Hollywood, about the studio system, about so many meta conversations that we hear in today's world and the Twitterverse, whatever bubble you live in any sense of social media, to be able to peel that back and, show how ridiculous, how really nobody knows anything, like that. They say that a lot about Hollywood, what works and doesn't work. Like nobody really knows. Some things just happen, and then that thing is the new mold that everything is made out of.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way they kind of exploit that on the show. And yeah, I think the way they end the season, in the context that they end it, again, a framework that I feel like could let this type of show go on for a while, because there's so many things about the industry that they could, have episodes about, that, they haven't even really scratched the surface, basically. Like they did these episodes this season about, casting, about, like a convention, or, the actual production of a oneer, these things that are like kind of hot topics. But a lot of the things that you hear about, like press junkets, and, I heard them talking about like the idea of IP being in theme parks. They were literally talking about these things as like, there's so many things that they could do to just poke and make fun of,
Mm-hmm.
the industry. Well,
And they can even follow one of these movies that they've set up already.
100%.
But what I like is they're not married to one thing. Like when the show started, I thought we were going to be like,
Oh, Kool-Aid, yeah.
well, I mean, it would have been funny to follow that movie, but I like that they've used it when they need to. They can come back to it. It's a little bit like the way a movie might have been treated on a show I didn't particularly care for, but Entourage would have.
Entourage, yeah.
But I mean, like, this is like, to me, the much funnier version of that idea of, oh, they could turn the whole Kool-Aid saga into a 2 or 3 season thing, because there's talk about IP with that and talk about sequels with that and spin-offs from that. There's fun to be had, but also they could move on to something totally different. So I think that I would just second what you said too about the stars they've gotten. Like, they get people to come and be, we've seen it. The person comes and does an exaggerated version of the star persona. I feel like this show has had better luck integrating it where there's humor and there's a real character there, but it's not always the obvious kind of like, I mean, like the Ron Howard episode might be the closest to what you expect from a sort of Hollywood satire, if you've watched Larry Sanders or even
Right.
Hacks or something like that, like to go, oh, he's going to be a total asshole when you don't expect him to be. But the other parts,
100%.
which was funny, and I didn't dislike the episode, but I like, for instance, the way Adam Scott comes off in the Golden Globes episode a lot. I love the Zoe Kravitz stuff. Like, she's got,
so good.
I mean, she's extremely funny in the last part of the season, and I even love the little background cameos you get a lot of at the Golden Globes. There's just people they get to come and be on stage, and it's like you said, the way they're shot is not like they're special guest star. It's like sometimes they're in the background, or sometimes like we're really following our characters. They're just around a lot of famous people, and I think. I think I heard that Seth Rogen said that Apple wanted him to put Tim Cook in the episode instead
I heard
of
that too.
Ted Sarandos, and he fought for Ted Sarandos. And I think that it comes off so much better that Apple didn't do the insecure thing of putting Tim Cook in there, because it's so much more appropriate that it be Ted Sarandos. And the joke of Apple being this kind of like, when they say, oh, we're going to be purchased by a tech company, I think it's good for Apple to be a little self-effacing, in that one department. Apple is not good at being self-effacing.
Yeah.
But in this one area, it's fun for them to say Netflix has the big dog, and they are the kind of, almost unmentioned. I guess they have been totally unmentioned, but anyway, no, I think you're right. It's smart, funny satire, and it's also like, I love how much it sticks to I kind of hope it sticks to this. I like that it's a workplace comedy. I like that we're not following these characters home a lot and getting into romances and ex-wives and ex-husbands. And I mean, There's been a little bit of that where it relates to the story, but I love how the season, I'm not going to say anything about how it ends, but it ends on a note of the coworkers together having a work moment. It doesn't end after that, when you see the emotional fallout or the whatever. And I'm not saying the show can't ever go there. I just like it that if that's something that they've set as a template, I really like that part of the show, because I think that it lets it be funny, and kind of what you said, Steve, it sticks to these things you're really interested in. Like every time they go, I feel like we're getting a little bit of insider information from Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg.
Oh, totally.
And I think that is, that adds to the appeal of this, that you're sort of like, okay, this seems like it's based on something, or at least it's a guy who knows what it takes to make a movie. So.
Yeah, no, this is great. I mean, I'm excited to see what they do with it for sure. And who else they get to play along with it. Because, like to your point, just one last thing. It's like, the idea that, you do through the season see their slate, I think is a really kind of great creative decision in the world that they're building for this studio.
Right.
Because it allows them to take meetings with Parker Finn to pitch Wink. Silly shit like that, because that is in-world stuff that's happening. And again, that goes to the workplace piece where they have these, studio heads or producers or whatever that are going for their credits and things like that. It's just, it all kind of just, the synergy there is just great, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe this is kind of what you're referring to, but like the way we see them, that episode about the oneer, you saw that one, right, Ronald? You've seen that far into the show, where like
Yeah.
that movie later when they're at the CinemaCon and they're hyping their slate. That movie is one of the movies that they're talking about. They don't get into and show a bunch of footage from it, but just the idea that it is like there is a little bit of a through line of going, oh, okay, this is interesting, and you kind of see like who's taking the glory for that particular movie and all that stuff. I think that it's. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm sure someone who's really in the business might say it's not as tell all and smart as you think it is. But for me, it feels very, very clever and somewhat surprising. And I love the Sal Saperstein thing that happens in one of the episodes. That's one of my favorite things. I hope they don't take that victory away from him too soon. But I think, Ike Barinholtz is also getting to play like maybe one of the best characters he's ever gotten to play in this show. And what's her name? The assistant who's actually the co-creator of the show, and she plays. What's her name on?
Who was actually the assistant? Wasn't she like actually his assistant? And he takes pictures from his assistant. Like the whole Seth man, like.
So Chase Sui Wonders, who plays Quinn, is like one of the co-creators, right? Is that what it is, or is it just his assistant? Am I wrong that she's in the show?
It wouldn't surprise me if she was.
Oh no, it's Frida Perez. Okay, no, it's Frida Perez who co-created the show.
Okay.
Who was an assistant at Point Grey.
Right. Yeah. I for some reason thought she was playing Quinn in the show. But
gotcha. Yeah. Okay, I missed that part. Yeah.
So she's just a producer. I don't think at this point she has appeared on the show. But there is a kind of stand-in character for her, I guess, is what I'm getting at, which is like a character that Matt has kind of tried to enable and empower at the studio. So anyway, it's really fun. And it's the kind of show where I'll be interested to see how it does grow into season 2, because you kind of hope they manage to keep this tone somehow and it doesn't become like, oh, now we can just get anybody and it's like every episode is this crazy thing. But I like how much it is a workplace comedy and how much it's a cringe comedy and how much it centers on those moments where Matt, like, that whole thing with the acceptance speech, the way he can't let it go. It just makes you so nervous, but it's like the quality you get from a really good Curb Your Enthusiasm episode, or back when Ricky Gervais was funny, how he was really good at doing that kind of cringe comedy of just, oh man, we're really living in this moment of this guy being deeply insecure, and it's so cringy and so relatable. And Seth Rogen somehow makes him not repulsive. I think that's maybe his comedic gift, is that he can be that squirmy and insecure without you just wanting to turn it off.
Yeah. Yep. Can't wait for the next season.
Yeah. Ronald, did you watch anything? Did you want to mention?
Yeah. I wanted to mention a Amazon Prime original show that I think is special, and which means it won't last long. Benito Skinner, who is a comedian and writer, created this show called Overcompensating, which is
I heard that I heard good things.
Oh man, it's funny, man. It's like the more that people say that like there aren't comedies to watch, there are so many of them. It's just they're kind of scattered around. It's like you got to do some work to see them. And Overcompensating just feels like a show that wouldn't have come on anything besides like Hulu or Amazon Prime, to be honest with you. And it happens to be Amazon Prime in this case. So it follows Wally Barrowman, plays Carmen, and Benny, played by Benito Skinner, who is a writer and director of a lot of the episodes. They are just starting in school and in college, and Benny has quite a bit that he's juggling, and so does Carmen, and they kind of become friends, fast friends, in the middle of it, and their friendship is kind of what keeps them sane in the middle of just trying to fit in fake IDs and weird pressures in groups of friends, and it's a fun show. It kind of reminds me of like, it's like American Pie-ish sort of, but like a newer version of it. Like it has all the sexual stuff, but it's contained in this cool way that feels like it's a little more empowering, a little more honest about the experience in college, and yeah, it's a good one. I suggest anybody that wants to laugh, that's one.
Cool.
Overcompensating.
I think I'd heard a little something about that,
Yeah,
but I can't remember now where I saw it being referred to. But I may have just seen the name pop up when I was scrolling through my apps.
Gotcha.
Did you guys watch The Rehearsal by any chance?
Yeah.
No.
Finished it? Oh, okay.
The season 2?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, well.
I haven't finished it, but I have watched, I think.
How is it?
I mean,
how
it's
is it?
super interesting, and there's maybe once you guys have both watched it and finished it, we can have a little follow-up chat. I mean, to me, it's like right in line. If you like Nathan Fielder and you view him as kind of a cracked genius of a sort, I think that like what he does, not just what he does with the second season, but everything he does in the name of that goal. Like it actually does have a real goal to it. That's actually kind of an interesting idea. And what he does over the course of the season is interesting and impressive in the usual way that his stunts are. But as usual, there's this other layer of meta commentary and how much is he a character and how much do the people know? And that's always very playful and very interesting, especially on this show. And then where he goes in the finale is, I mean, it's to me genuinely impressive, like as a human, what he does in the finale. So, yeah, just a really interesting season of a show. And I haven't finished this by any means yet. It's a couple of long episodes. They're both like movie length, but Pee-wee as Himself, the new documentary about Paul Rubens, where it's basically the most of Paul Rubens' like truth we've ever heard. It's just him talking to the camera and telling his story. And at the time when he was filming this, he had been battling cancer for years, but hadn't told anybody. And you see him even say the idea of getting your story out before you go is appealing. So it's really interesting that he wasn't really telling about his cancer, but he did want to. He said, the goal of this documentary for me is I just want to set the record straight about a couple things, and he's very funny and a bit grumpy in some ways but it's very playful, and it's just really interesting seeing Paul Rubens, so much Paul Rubens, not Pee-wee, not some character.
Yeah.
And he's literally talking about things like, I've never heard him talk so openly about his sexuality and falling in love with this guy. And then when he turned his back on this guy to sort of go into his career, and he decided to go back into the closet to help his acting career, and all these things that, I don't know, just is an interesting guy. And I think he's he comes off very, even more esoteric and like creative and artsy than you might have thought, especially his early days. So I'm only about a little over halfway into the first of these 2 episodes that are, like I said, about an hour and 40 minutes a piece. I don't know if it's going to have more installments. It's one of those things that says it's a season with 2 episodes, but it really kind of seems like a long documentary broken into 2 halves, So just called Pee-wee as Himself, and it's on Max.
Very cool.
That trailer looks great, man. I want to see that.
Yeah, I mean, it's very charming, and it's very easy to settle into. I almost feel like you could listen to it. It does have some cool visuals, but it's so much of just his voice telling his story. And it's really crazy to see all these young pictures of him when he was just an actor, doing all these very like performance art-ish things, but also very serious things that he, for a time thought that would be his destiny, was to be a serious actor. So fascinating fellow.
Cool.
That lull usually means that it's been a show. We just achieved an episode, right? Did you have anything else you wanted to mention, Steve, that you've watched?
I just wanted to say I love Thunderbolts.
Okay, right,
That's all.
yeah. Let's close the loop on
I
that.
just want to close the loop on that real quick. So that
I'm so glad. I am so
the,
legit glad that you enjoyed it.
It's
I
the
loved
hat
it too.
trick for the movie Schmovie. We all really enjoyed Thunderbolts. It just gets the sign of a seal of approval.
Seen it twice, man. I might go see it a third time. It's one of
It's
those
really
movies.
sad that it's like, kind of being framed as this huge failure, which it may be financially, again, to nobody's fault, but probably Marvel and Disney, that'd be like, you're spending too much money on these fucking movies.
Yeah.
But I just thought it worked so well.
Yeah.
And while in some ways it felt smaller, I guess,
Yeah.
there were still enough moments in it that felt huge to me. That like
Yeah.
I text you guys like
Yeah.
the Bucky scene in the desert, like which is in the trailer, but
Yeah.
like in the scope of the film and with the score and everything, I was just like, man, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Like so awesome. Like how contradictory what they thought was happening is to what is actually happening. And it's like, this is why this movie's working on me so well. They're
Yeah.
such fools in some ways that it's like I want them to win because they're failing in so many ways.
Yeah.
Right. And even Bucky, when he gets involved and realizes he doesn't really have
Yeah.
the full story, he's got to realize he's been thrown in with the losers in a way too. You know what I mean? Like, which is just interesting. I'm so glad you dug that particular aspect of it, which is that it really did have like a fun, like it again, I keep mentioning James Gunn in reference to the tone, but it wasn't his tone, but it was similar to that idea of you are not just watching the idea of losers. You're literally seeing characters who you're getting to see them fail. You know what I mean? It's not just it's not just a concept; it's a literal thing, and you also understand their emotionality. The fact that they are all depressed. It's interesting how much the movie wallows in that without being a downer.
Yeah.
And without being
I don't know,
one
man.
note.
I wanted to just shout it one more time while we had a moment that whenever it comes home for video, I can't wait to show Aaron.
I'm definitely going to see it again too.
But it was such a fun watch, man. Such a big fan of it. But that's all I wanted to say. So that's an episode. Yeah. Moviesmovie.com is the website. You can go there to listen to past episodes or just subscribe to the podcast and whatever platform you prefer to use for your podcast listening pleasure. Also, we have youtube.com/moviesmovie podcast. If you want the visual opportunity that we present there, you can subscribe to see the video podcast as well as audio if you want that still. And we also have the shorts there, which are just kind of the episodes with some highlights and little snippets of what we talk about throughout the episodes that Ronald is kind enough to put together for us. Thank you so much for listening. Again, Ronald's pick for next week's required viewing is War of the Roses, which is what you said. It was only available for rental, like digital rental, right?
Digital rental.
Just come along for that ride. But thank you so much for listening. And as always, you've made our day. Thanks.
Bye.